Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. Do you have $300 to $400 to spend on a video card? Are you confused by all the options available and you just want to know what should you buy? You've come to the right place. I have 4 AMD video cards and 4 NVIDIA cards here for you today. A few of these I've tested previously in smaller videos. A few of these are brand new with some brand new tests and 2 bonuses, some live gameplay as well. We have the AMD RX 5700, the 5700 XT, the Vega 56, and the Vega 64 for Team Red. And then on Team Green, we have the GTX 1660 Ti, the RTX 2060, the 2060 Super, and the 2070 Super. Lots of charts, lots of comparisons, dollar cost per frame per second, percentage performance difference relative to the 5700. So I normalize the performance for that card and then show you how much above or below in terms of a percentage basis all other 7 cards are by comparison. We've got a lot to talk about. Let's take a walk. Right smack in the middle of our $300 to $400 price range is the RX 5700, and it's also one of the newest graphics cards that we're taking a look at today. It's represented by the card in front of me. This is the Sapphire Pulse. It is $369. It is $20 more than the blower reference cards, and it's worth every penny. This runs cool and quiet. It's a very nice card, and if you're looking for a 5700, put it on your short list. Now, there's many others that are nice as well, but this one is very nice indeed. Now, there's a bunch of new features with the 5700 line, formerly codenamed Navi. I'm going to make it really short and sweet. 7nm production process, PCI Express 4, and GDDR6. I would call those the big highlights. There's others. In fact, there's 20 different items in the marketing blurbs, but we'd be here for an hour going over all of them. These are the second generation of 7nm GPUs, the first being the Radeon 7, which is pretty much discontinued at this point. It does run cool and quiet. Unlike the Vegas, which we'll talk about, the Vegas are nice, but they do tend to run a little bit hot and a little bit loud relative to these. This has no heat or noise issues whatsoever. I would absolutely put this in a computer next to me without a problem. The PCI Express 4 is nice, and that's future supporting. If you have an X570 motherboard with a third generation Ryzen CPU on it, it supports it. It doesn't need it. It really doesn't make a difference. That's probably a video I'll do at some point showing it between the 2 platforms, but it really doesn't matter at the moment. It's sort of getting us all ready for the next generation of cards when it does matter. And then finally, GDDR6. Unlike the Vega cards, which used HBM or high bandwidth memory, which was more expensive, these use 8 gigabytes of GDDR6. It's less expensive. It lets the cards be more price competitive. It's fast enough, and as you'll see, it does pretty well in the benchmarks. In my previous video, which I'll link to below, I put more details when I talked about the NVIDIA cards. I featured more of the NVIDIA cards in the previous video, and if you'd like me to talk about those a bit more, go check out the video linked down below. So I won't regurgitate a lot of that. Instead, I kind of want to focus a little bit on the Vega cards, which are new to this. The tests here have never been seen before in any other video, the 56 and the 64. And while if you get those for a good price, they can be a good deal, the heat, the noise, the power consumption versus the new cards make them maybe not as good of a deal as they appear on paper. Having said that, as I'm filming this video, this exact card right here, the PowerColor Triple Fan Vega 56, is available on Amazon for $299. How much longer it stays there is an open question, but it is $70 less expensive than this Sapphire Pulse right here, and some of you may be looking at that going, wow, $70 less? It's about the same performance, right? You'll have to wait for the benchmarks. We got a bunch of those in the video. Yes and no, we'll get to that. Now, the Vega 64 is represented here by this amazing Sapphire Nitro, which is truly a nice card. These are hard to get, and I kind of had to figure out where to put these into the price structure because these used to be pretty common at $400 a few months ago, but they've kind of gone away at this point. If you could find a used Vega 56 or 64, they might be worth considering, but if you're buying new, you might want to consider spending the extra $70 to $100 if you're getting an XT card, because you get a cooler card, a quieter card, and most importantly, you're getting the new RDNA technology as opposed to the old graphics core Next. It's not a huge difference today, but something to think about if you're spending similar money. If you buy the latest and greatest card, future driver optimizations and future improvements will continue to come down the road. Whereas cards like these Vegas that have already been out for a year or two, they've already had those optimizations. So the split in performance I would expect to grow over time, even if it's not too big today. For those of you curious, this is a Sapphire Nitro, and this thing is an absolute beast. It weighs a ton. You need a huge case, a ton of power delivery. But if you want to see what one of these Nitros looks like compared to a Pulse, this thing is impressive. Now, for what it's worth, for not very much more money, Sapphire does have a Nitro version of the 5700 XT available right now for $439. It's a little bit of a price premium, but if you want a beast of a cooler, if you want something that's very quiet and does not get hot, then that might be something you want to take a look at. All of this will be linked to Amazon and Newegg down in the video description below. Let's get right to the benchmarks. Now, these are going to be full screen in quads, and I'm going to show you all of the AMD cards. I'm going to put the 5700 and 5700 XT on top and the two Vegas on bottom because 3 of those 4 cards you've never seen before in a previous video. The GTX cards will be linked down in the description below if you want to watch the video that has all of those. After I show you all the benchmarks, and as I said, there's going to be a lot of them with a lot of charts, including dollar cost per frame per second and percentage differences, we'll come back and I want to offer you some of my thoughts of using these in the real world as opposed to just the raw frame rates. But for now, let's get to the benchmarks. First up, we have Assassin's Creed Odyssey, our favorite super optimized game of the past, oh, wait a minute, reverse that. Our completely unoptimized game, but it's sort of a worst case scenario. If a graphics card runs Assassin's Creed Odyssey, it'll kind of run everything because this game is just, well, it is what it is. We have on the top of the screen the RX 5700 and the 5700 XT, and on the bottom of the screen we have the Vega 56 and the Vega 64. I have already shown in previous videos the NVidia cards, so 3 of the new cards are here, so I'm showing these to you. The performance is not tremendously different between these 4 cards, but it's also not the same either. And you'll also see the various clock speeds and the temperatures and the fan speeds at the same time. Those are to some extent graphics card dependent. Different models of different cards are certainly going to have different fan speeds and different temperatures, so they're not directly comparable because we won't have an apples to apples comparison because these cards are different brands, but it gives you something to look at. There are so many numbers on the screen here. If you really want to stop and look at it, you're going to have to pause some of these because we've got 8 cards, we've got 3 different resolutions, and in a second, I'm going to show you the minimum frame rates. All I want to call out is that the total difference in performance between the worst and the best card here is not really that large of a gap. On the very bottom end at 1080p, we've got the Vega 56 and the GTX 1660 Ti at 74 frames per second average, and it kind of carries over to the other resolutions as well, 55 and 53. At the very top end, we have the RX 5700 XT at 94 and the 2070 Super at 97. The percentage difference there is about 20% between the best and the worst. These cards are all really, really similar. That will not stay the same through every test, but I want you to keep that in mind as we go through the charts. Now, those were average frame rates. These are the minimums, and you might notice something with the minimums. In this game, at least, NVIDIA does much better with the minimums than the AMD cards do. For sure, the 1660 Ti is a little bit down, but it's also the weakest card here, quite frankly. The fact of the matter is, 41 to 55 between the 5700 XT and the 2070 Super is a fairly large minimum frame rate difference, so something to keep in mind if you play the Assassin's Creed line. Moving on to Far Cry New Dawn. Again, we have the 5700 and 5700 XT on the top, and they're remarkably close in terms of performance. On the bottom, Vega 56 and 64 as we had before. The performance is more the same than it is different, and by the time you get to the end of this video, probably one of the biggest standouts is not going to be which card blows away the other card or which card is just terrible and performs horribly. But if you're spending in the $300 to $400 price range for a video card in late 2019, then you get $300 to $400 worth of graphics card performance. The idea that one card at the same price is going to be 50% faster or slower than another, you will occasionally find a game that does that, but you won't find tons of games that do that. There's the outliers. But this particular game right here, Far Cry New Dawn, is actually very consistent in performance from run to run. It runs very well on both companies' cards. It doesn't have any crazy lows or crazy highs. It's actually a fairly good benchmarking game. 116 to 120 to 107 to 114 to 96, that's the outlier because it's a 1660 Ti, to 109 to 117 to the winner, 123, which it should be for $500. Those are trivial differences. In the real world at 1080p, these cards are all pretty similar, with the weak one obviously being the 1660 Ti. At 1440p, the divergence does grow a little bit. We're looking at 93 to 103 on the 5700 series, 80 to 89 on the Vegas, 70 to 81, which is fairly, well, that's a 10% performance difference, a little over 10% performance difference to the 1660 Ti to 2060. Another 10 frames per second to the 2060 Super, and another 10 frames per second to the 2070 Super. Looking at the minimum frame rates, it's exactly this. In fact, look how embarrassingly similar the minimum frame rates at 1080p are. 89 to 88 to 87 to 89, oh, there's 76, 89, 94, and 94. It's like the most boring chart ever, and yet here we have 8 graphics cards at 3 resolutions. They do diverge, obviously, at higher resolutions, the demands and the changes and whatnot. But these are all very nice cards. There's no clear winner here. Well, I say there's no clear winner. Hold the horses. We have Gears 5, which is brand new. And unlike the last chart, which was boring as bananas, this one is not. We will definitely have some clear winners and losers in this game. Now, this game does well on AMD cards, so I'm sure you're all thinking that Vega 64 is just going to crush it. Well, those of you watching the real-time numbers should already know the answer to the question is, yeah, that's a big fat nope. If you already own a Vega card, they're fine. If you find one that's cheap and used and you get a great, amazing deal on it because someone's upgrading, sure, they're completely competitive and there's nothing wrong with them. But dollar for dollar, if they're the same price as the 5700s, don't buy a Vega. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Get the 5700s. They run cooler. They run quieter. They are faster. They are new technology. Just, it's frankly a no-brainer if the price is the same. If the price isn't the same, well, there you go. 99 frames per second on the 5700 versus 113 on the 5700 XT. That is the largest percentage difference of any game so far. On the Vega 56 and 64, 84 to 95, and notice that they are both reasonably, substantially, not substantially slower than the 5700 cards. Take a look at the NVIDIA cards. The 2060 non-Super is 84 frames per second. That's a decent chunk below the 99. That's a substantial performance difference beneath the 5700. The 1660 Ti just does not cut the mustard. When they launched, a lot of people said, man, the RTX 2060 is a waste of money. Get a 1660 Ti. Honestly, I really think that logic should have been reversed back then. I didn't think the 1660 Ti was worth it. But it's water under the bridge now for a lot of people. The 2060 Super does hold its own, but with the 5700, not the XT. And then it takes a 2070 Super to hold its own with the 5700 XT. Those same results tend to carry across 1440p and 4K as well. This really does like those new Navi cards. Now we have Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now I don't know for sure if Ghost Recon Wildlands is going to end up with the same type of performance as Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which is just about to come out, and AMD has got a cool offer where you can get a copy of Ghost Recon Breakpoint, the new game, with their CPUs or their graphics. They've got two new game bundles coming out. If you buy a Ryzen CPU, you get a choice of games depending upon which one you buy. And then if you buy a AMD video card, you also get a choice of games. There's potentially 3 games plus the 90 days of Game Pass available. So that's actually pretty cool. I didn't do like a video or a news announcement about it because game bundles come and go all the time. But when I filmed the last video, That had not been announced yet. I didn't know about it. So it just came out this morning as I'm recording this voiceover at the end of September. 97 frames per second on the 5700 versus 105 on the XT. Truth of the matter is that's not really actually a huge difference in terms of what you pay for the card and the frame rate. It's kind of, you just get what you pay for. Notice the Vegas are substantially behind here. I'm actually going to show you some live gameplay later in this video on the Vega 64 just to sort of show you that card. I actually did film that. I played around with all these cards. I'll show you that here at the end of these tests. Notice that the NVIDIA cards are roughly lined up with the AMD cards, the non-Super and the 5700, and then the 2060 Super and the 5700 XT are kind of neck and neck. So Gears 5 showed them way far apart, and Ghost Recon shows them neck and neck. It completely depends upon which game you're playing, what detail setting, what resolution, what CPU you're running them on. I see a lot of absolute statements from people saying, nope, this card's always the winner, or nope, those are always the same. You're both wrong. It depends. Frankly, it always depends upon what you're doing. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I am not going to show you the full benchmark run, and I'm not putting in the 1440p and 4K. The text was too small when I did it last time. We're leaving it off because I'm going to show you just a very small snippet of live gameplay and a bonus. Grand Theft Auto 5, which I didn't do in the previous video, but just to give you an example of what is possible, I'm going to show you that here in just a second. Because I do play more games than I show you in these videos. I do play around with the cards. I sit down and load up some of my favorite games, and I just get an experience of what's it like to really use these cards. There's a world of difference between running benchmarks and playing with them. And I do sit down and play games with them so that I get an experience of, okay, how's that card? Let me play this game on it, see how it feels, and so on. 107 to 119 on the two Navi cards, 88 to 99 on the Vegas, 82 to 97 on the 1660 Ti and 2060, and then 111 and 127 on the two Supers. And that pretty much carries forward, except it picks up a bit at 1440p and 4K. Lordy, did the use of RTX and DLSS get a lot of comments on the previous video. It is what it is. It's a checkbox in the game. It's there. I think people are going to use it. I test graphics cards the way I think people will really use them. They go into the graphics options and they go, ooh, I have an RTX card. Well, yeah, I want that feature. And they check it. Render resolution adjustments, image sharpening adjustments, driver-based changes. I don't think people do that. I don't think that is a typical use case for most people. So that's not how I test. You are absolutely free to disagree with me. But my logic and reasoning is that people check boxes in the game. They don't go out to drivers and tools and customizations. I mean, you might, but I don't think most consumers do, so I don't test that way. Grand Theft Auto 5. This is just me driving around basically being a huge pain in the neck for the police department as they try to chase me around. This is 4K. Very high detail for those of you curious. Every option was set to very high detail across the board. None of the advanced sliders were used. It's just straight up high detail. And you can see the numbers in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, kinda, although the numbers are pretty small. But we're over 60 frames per second. And this was very, very smooth. This is the Vega 64. And if you want to play games at 4K, if you look at the rest of the results at 4K, it's easy to say, well, man, you can't play games at 4K. That's ridiculous. Yes, you can. You just can't play Assassin's Creed Odyssey at 4K. You just can't play Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 4K. Well, 2070 Super, but not a Vega 64, you can't. But you can play Grand Theft Auto 5. You can play older games. You can play games that are 3 to 5 years old all day long at 4K without a problem. Now, this is Ghost Recon Wildlands, and I spent about 30 minutes playing this, driving around, shooting up convoys, making a mess of the place. Now, this is one of the benchmark games, but of course the benchmark is the built-in benchmark. This is live gameplay. For those of you curious, the numbers on the screen are for when I tested it at 4K. It really wasn't playable at 4K. In live gameplay, it averaged 47 frames per second with a 1% low of 39 frames per second and a 0.1% low of 32. That's what those numbers, those are residual before I changed it over to 14. It was horrible. It wasn't controllable. It was awful. And these, by the way, are not very high detail. This is a mixture of medium and high. I set it to high detail, and then I turned some things down. I turned shadows down, texture detail down, a few other things. I customized the settings to get a really nice playable frame rate here, and it is playable. it's actually quite nice at 1440p on a Vega 64.
requested a vehicle from the rebels.
Moving on, let's take a look at the percentage difference compared to a 5700. The 5700 XT was, across the games and resolutions tested, 10% faster. The Vega 56 was 14% slower. The Vega 64 was 5% slower. The 1660 Ti was 20% slower. The 2060 was 8% slower. The 2060 Super was 3% faster. And the 2070 Super, I hope, was 14% faster because, after all, it's a $500 card. In terms of total performance difference, ignore the 2070 Super for a minute because it is a $500 card. I understand that. The difference between the highest card here, which was the 5700 XT, and the lowest card, which was the 1660 Ti, is only 20%. These are not huge differences. They are differences, they are real, but these are not mind-blowingly crazy, insane differences. Here's the 1440p differences, 100 to 112. So you basically get 12% more performance on a 5700 XT at 1440p versus a 5700. A Vega 56 is going to be 11% slower than a 5700. 5% slower on a Vega 64, a lot slower on a 1660 Ti, a little bit slower and a little bit faster on the two 2060s, and obviously much faster, 20% faster on the 2070 Super. Now, as far as 4K, none of these are really 4K cards for the latest and greatest games. However, as I showed you with Grand Theft Auto 5, 4K, very high detail across the board, over 60 frames per second, no issues whatsoever, completely playable, and lots of fun, but that game is now a number of years old. For 3 to 5 year old games or esports games, yes, you can use these cards for 4K gaming. For AAA games, 1440p runs for now, but it won't run for very long. And 1080p, you got years and years ahead of yourself for any kind of game you want to throw at these cards. The only two bad deals here are the Vega 64 and the 2070 Super. In terms of dollar cost per frame per second, it almost doesn't matter what you buy. The two Navi cards, the two Vega cards, and the two 2060 cards with the addition of the 1660 Ti, although actually, even though it has a very low cost here, I still wouldn't buy one. I'd buy a 2060. The fact is, these are all about the same performance for the money. Regardless of the plus $50 or minus $50, you're getting what you're paying for, with the exception of, well, the two obvious cards in front of you. Moving to 1440p, again, the story doesn't really change very much. The 5700 is a great deal at $4.70 per frame per second, but the 5700 XT is really the same price. I mean, 10 cents more per frame per second, that's a rounding error. That's not an important number. The Vega 56, which is currently available as I'm recording this for $2.99 on Amazon, is actually a really, really good deal at $4.52. I wouldn't buy one. I would spend the extra $40 or $50 and get a 5700. You get 7 nanometer, you get a cooler, quieter card, you get the new technology, the RDNA. Unless you already own a Vega 56 or you find a used one for cheap, run, and go get yourself a Navi card. They are far superior to the Vegas in all respects. As far as the NVIDIA cards, you get what you pay for except for the 2070 Super. It's really kind of premium priced until you get to 4K, in which case it's not as bad. But again, none of these are really meant for 4K gaming. I mean, you can do it, but you notice it kind of compresses here. That Vega 64, and I'm allowing a really good price on that Vega 64. Those are hard to find new these days. I'm only marking it $100 over the Vega 56, so $399 versus $299. And actually, as I'm recording this, there are no Vega 64s for $399, but I'm assuming you'll find one at some point if you care. Again, if you find one for $250, forget everything I just said and go grab it. That's a steal. But used cards are used cards, and new cards are new cards. Well, that was an absolutely crazy number of benchmarks. For those of you who watched the whole thing, thank you. Gold star for you. It's greatly appreciated. For those of you who fast forwarded through half of them, I understand. It took days to put all of that together. Testing and retesting and making sure of the results is not a short process. As far as the short version, which is ironic coming at the end of the video, but if you did skip through some of the benchmarks to the next talkie point of the video, it simply comes down to this. In the $300 to $400 price range, not counting the 2070 Super, you get what you pay for. As you saw there, the dollar cost per frame per second between, say, the 5700 and 5700 XT is this much. You can't even see through it. That sliver is so narrow. It's true that some of the NVIDIA cards are not quite as good of a deal, but as far as the cards go, which one you want to pick really comes down to certain things such as, do you have a brand preference? What monitor do you have? If you have a FreeSync versus a G-Sync monitor, that might inform your decision. It's true that NVIDIA does support FreeSync now, but only select monitors and generally only the expensive premium ones. Cheaper FreeSync monitors are not going to be supported, whereas AMD is going to support every FreeSync monitor. And of course, if you have a G-Sync monitor, then you have to go NVIDIA if you want to have variable refresh rate technology. Something to consider. Another point to consider is, do you record your video or do you live stream? Now, both of these cards have hardware video encoders, but the fact of the matter is NVIDIA's works better. I've used both of them, I've tried recording with both of them, and AMD has some work to do on their driver optimization when it comes to their video encoder. Just from my personal experience, if you want to Twitch live stream or stream to Mixer or record your gameplay for later upload to make YouTube videos out of or something, the video encoder that's built into NVIDIA is better. Then there's ray tracing. Now, this is a hot button topic, and I fully understand that there's a lot of people here who vigorously agree and disagree. Oh, ray tracing, it's just a gimmick. It's not real. It doesn't matter. It's going to go away soon. None of these cards have the performance. I've heard all the arguments. I get it. If you're in that camp, fine. Discount it. Don't take it into consideration. On the other hand, you might think, well, ray tracing is coming, having support for it might be nice in the future. The tensor cores, the DLSS, whichever side of that particular scenario you fit on. I understand that's controversial as well, but whichever way you feel about that, it at least has those features. AMD doesn't. AMD will get them. AMD has ray tracing. They have AI cores coming in a future generation product, but it's probably going to be another year before they get that technology. The upcoming consoles have been confirmed. One of the Xbox developers recently linked that the Xbox Scarlett, the upcoming console, will have dedicated ray tracing hardware cores included with it. So that cat kind of got out of the bag right there. So that is coming in the next consoles. Whether it matters or not by the time those games come is another, because if it takes 3 years for ray tracing to become common and you replace your card in 3 years, I get the point that it may not matter, but it's something to think about. Power consumption, I'm pleased to report, is very similar between the NVIDIA cards and the new Navi cards. These have fixed the power consumption issues. Vega runs hot and it runs loud and it uses a ton of power. These cards don't. So if you're worried about power consumption, don't. A 500 watt power supply is all you need for either the 2060s or the 5700 series cards. Temperatures are a complete non-issue. Even this Pulse with this decent but not huge cooler had no temperature issues whatsoever, so it's very nice. That brings me to another point, card selection. Regardless of which brand, which company, which whatever that you buy, spend the $20 to $30 to $40, depending upon how high up the train you want to go. Spend a bit extra to get yourself a better card. This Sapphire Pulse versus the reference cards, that's not even a contest. For $20, if you spend $349 and you buy one of the reference blowers versus $369 to buy this, I'm sorry. We just don't see the world the same way, because that is the easiest $20 ever in the computer business. That is the biggest no-brainer I can think of. Of all the places to put money in your computer, not spending the $20 on buying a premium card like this very nice Sapphire is just ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. And that's true for the NVIDIA cards as well. This right here, for example, this is the MSI 1660 Ti. It's a few dollars more. This one retailed for $309 instead of $279. So it's a $30 price premium over the reference card, although there's a mail-in rebate at the time that I was doing this. It has a metal backplate, it has quieter fans, it has a bigger density of fins and a better heat pipe arrangement inside versus the cheap reference cards. That is the easiest money ever. Buy yourself a mid-range premium card. You don't have to buy top of the line. The Nitro is nice, the one I showed you above this, it's nice, but it's not necessary. The Pulse does the job. You don't have to buy the most expensive card made. Just don't buy the cheapest. Spend the $20, $30, $40 more to get yourself a mid-range card. It's a much nice. You're going to keep this thing for 3 years. Enjoy your card, have a quieter, cooler running, less annoying computer. Spend some money on a nice video card. Used video cards are an interesting topic, and not one that I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about here. This is the PowerColor Red Dragon that you can see here. This is the actual card that was tested and shown to you in all of these benchmarks. It looks impressive with the 3 fans, although these fans are smaller than they look compared to some of the others. And it is not an overly thick card, and the fin arrangement is fairly thin. It also has a strange pin configuration with the PCI Express way over here. There's nothing here. There's no card here. When I turn it around, open fins. Now, that aids in cooling and it helps, but it actually has a very short PCB and a very strange placement for the PCI Express power cables. This card is not silent. This card is loud. That Nitro, this Vega 64 Nitro, was much quieter than this PowerColor is. If you can find one of these for $200, it's a deal. Would I buy one new for $300? No. Even with this at $300, the dollar cost per frame per second chart says this is the least expensive card. It's cheaper per frame per second than this 5700. But not by much. I mean, it's a minor difference. This Sapphire Pulse is so much cooler and so much quieter running. It has new technology, the new RDNA. It's going to be supported for longer in the future. This makes sense if you get it used for $200. It does not make sense at $300 in my mind. I would skip the Vegas and I would buy a 5700. At least if you're buying a new card. Thank you all so much for watching this very long video. If you like our content and you want to see the channel grow and you want to see more frequent uploads, please consider supporting the channel. Linked in the video description below. $2 per month for Patreon. You get access to the Tech Deals Discord. That's linked at the bottom of the video description below. We got a bunch of private channels and a great community over there. If you've got $5 a month to support, consider subscribing to Floatplane. Get early access, no ads on the videos, watch the videos there early. We also have a private comment section there as well, and you get access to the Tech Deals Discord. The more of you who are able to support, the more of these videos we can make and make more often. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you love it. Remember to subscribe using the big huge red button directly below. Smash that like button, leave your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of this video, good, bad, the ugly, and everything else in between. Links to Amazon and Newegg to everything you see here will be down in the video description, and I will link to eBay as well for some of these cards, especially the Vegas used if you're so inclined to look for those. All of those links are affiliate links. They support the channel at no extra cost to you. Whatever you end up happening to buy is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see all of you next time.